Hello world, welcome. I'm Don, and if you've just watched my last video, you'll see that I'm wearing the same t-shirt and sitting in exactly the same place. I'm recording these intros sort of back to back. I'll be putting the videos out in reasonably rapid succession. And this second video, which I've separated out, is another idea that I had a little while ago now. It's been floating in the back of my mind that I should do something. I did a series of photos for an event. So I arrived at the event, I took some shots. I was only there briefly, but in the end I had about 300 shots, and I ended up delivering about 100 shots to those fine folks. And you know what? This came to me because a lot of the time when I process slowly, carefully, taking the time to get it right. See if there are any Nova Scotians there. They'll get that reference. Anyway. Lost my train of thought there. I was so pleased with my joke. So yeah, normally when I process, I process, quite deliberately. And so I love the way that DxO is laid out. You've got your light tab, and you can kind of go through there and then shift across to the color tab, and it keeps everything tidy and separated, and you can just sort of systematically work your way through. But what I quickly found with 100 images that I was trying to do super quickly is that that's not so efficient, and it was going really slowly. But then jumped into my brain, aha, I have a solution for that. So this video is me sharing that solution, how I sort of sped up my workflow. And I'll also, if you wait for it, if you stick around till the end, look at me learning all the YouTube tricks. No, it's not a trick. But I'll put it in the timestamp, so you don't need to stick around till the end. There's a couple of other little tidbits that I'll share as well. That I was doing some printing, and a few different things I did along the path in preparing the image for printing that I thought could be helpful. So I'll throw those in as well. So with that, let's dive in and take a look. All right, so I am just getting to record the screenshot portion of this now. In my intro, I said it'll be coming soon, and well, it hasn't come soon, but thank you for your patience. Here we are. So I've got some things that I'd like to share with you. I mentioned one of them particularly in the intro. I'm going to add a few more bits to that, but we'll start off with part one, which is organizing your palettes for speedier work. So here I've got a bunch of images, and and to me this that I'm about to show you especially shines when you have a bunch that you want to edit. Obviously, there's a lot of duplicates here, and I probably wouldn't be editing that many of these, but just for argument's sake. So if I look at this, and my normal flow, I look at this image and I think about, okay, what do I want to do with exposure? Maybe I want to pop on a highlight priority, make sure that the highlights are being saved. Maybe I want to dip a smart lighting on, whatever the case may be, and then work across to my color, work across to my detail. And then on to the perspective and whatnot. I like that when I'm working on individual images. It helps my mind. I really like the way they've laid this out. But if you've got a bunch of images and you're trying to go quickly, this is really inefficient because you probably just want one little setting from here and one little setting from there, and you need to bounce all around in order to get at those settings. So point number one is about getting at other palettes. So right now I'm using this, and you can tell I'm using this because a part of it's blue, like the light tab here is blue. If I click it so that it's no longer blue, it takes me to a different look. This has got sort of an old school. This is how DxO was years ago, and it lingers here in the background. So basically we've got basic tools you can see, and then because I've got viewpoint and film pack, those show up below this. We can just remove those. We can get them back later if we want to. So these are basic tools, and maybe this step is enough for many because you could go through and you could expand. I'm going to want color. I'm going to want smart lighting, and kind of get yourself ready like that. But you still have a bit of clutter, so let's take that a step further, and look at what we can do with this. I'm just going to float this dock for a second. Sorry, it just popped out of your view, but there we go. I'll just float that out there because it seems like it'll be a bit easier. I'm going to come up here to palettes, the palette menu that's there. And I'm going to say to create a user palette. And it's going to ask me for a name. I'll just say my palette, and click OK. And now it's created a spot for me, and it says to drag your favorite corrections here. So let's say I'm working through some images and I notice basically that I'm doing some white balance and I want to have my exposure compensation nearby. And I'm doing some tone, some contrast, maybe some color accentuation, and some crop. So these are the things that I'm using regularly. And I know some of those have gone closed, but you can just click them to open them if you'd like to have them open. So these are the ones I'm using regularly. So I make my own little palette and go ahead and use that. I can go ahead and close this one. And then as I'm going through, I can click on the image and say, what does this one want? Oh, this one wants exposure. This one wants contrast, and let's bump the contrast up. Whatever the case may be, but you can just much more quickly burn your way through a bunch of images like this. And then if you get to the point where you no longer want this palette, you can just right-click on it. If maybe it's something you use all the time, maybe it's for a one-off. But if you do want to get rid of it, you can just right-click on it and delete it, and it is gone, lickety-split. And then you're back here, and you're wondering, oh, where'd my stuff go? You can just come back and put your basic tools if you want to. If you want to totally reset, the quickest way that I've found for that is just to come here and click on DxO Standard, and it'll kind of put it back to how it was, including everything that was in the basic set, as well as the viewpoint and film pack entries all in that one spot. And then, of course, you can get back to your tabs if you want to this way. So part 2, let's go ahead and take a look at presets. So again, let's say that I have this series of images here that are going to be quite similar in terms of what we do with them. So I come along here and I make a few adjustments. I'll go highlight priority medium, give it a pop of smart lighting. I'll maybe raise that a little bit, maybe bring that down a few points. And obviously this isn't the main point, so I won't go too far with this. Maybe give it a little bit more contrast, whatever the case might be. So I do that, and I'd like to make a preset that I can apply to other bits and pieces. So I can come over here. So there's the apply preset space up here, but there's also generally, and if it's not there, you can add it there. A preset editor should be just in the palette space here. Do I see? I haven't directly looked. Yeah, there it is. So if it's not open, just come in here and make sure there's a tick next to your preset editor, and that'll pop that open. And it comes with, obviously, what's this? This is advanced history. I'm not worried about that right now. It comes with presets that just come with it. Some of these you can see are related to film pack, etc. But let's say that I wanted to make a preset out of this image that I've just been doing. Quite literally, I can just come up here. This one, new preset from current settings, and maybe I'll call it. That's wrong, isn't it? There's a wharf. Spelling's not my strong point. We'll call that good enough. I got a sneaking suspicion that's right. Nice one. So now if I scroll down here, we've got a preset that is wharf. So if I want to then go ahead and apply it to these images here, because they're all quite similar, then I can go ahead and select them, click on wharf, and apply. And it'll just go through and apply them all, lickety-split. If I right-click on that, I can choose to delete it. Again, these might be things that you make, you're going through a particular batch of images, and you want to do up a preset that you're only going to keep in the short term. That tends to be how I use it more of the time, because I find presets so seldom apply on heaps and heaps of images. So just want to get rid of it, go ahead and delete. Do you really want to delete this preset? Yes. And so you may have noticed when I did that, when I created my preset, it came down, it just kind of dropped it at the end of this random list, and it wasn't terribly organized. So it is just worth mentioning that if you want to keep them longer term and you want them to be organized, you can go ahead and, well, let's say, so notice how this is clicked right now. Oops, I don't want to rename it, but notice how this is clicked. If I do a new folder, it'll put a new folder inside Film Pack Time Machine. I'll just go ahead and delete that one because I don't necessarily want that one. And then if I just scroll up here to all presets, if I go, and you can also right click, you get some choices when you right click. But if I go new folder here, it's going to drop me a new folder kind of at that level, so to speak. So I can add my presets and enter, and then then if I come back so that I've got a single image. I had a bunch of images selected, and while that was the case, I couldn't create a preset off of a bunch of images. I have to create a preset off of a single image. So if I come back here, and now I'm just beyond my folder, click new preset, and my preset. And it did not go in, but we'll just drag it up. Boom. And now I've got it in my folder. Cool. So hopefully that helps. On to number 3. Item number 3 is going to be copying and pasting correction settings. And I'm just going to go ahead and reset these. Actually, I think maybe I already have reset them. So they're good to go. I'll just apply things across to them. Before I do my correction settings, though, I'm going to do a wee crop on this guy, just for argument's sake. Hold my control key down. It's going to let me drag that independently without having it want to stick to the size. And I'll drag this side in a little bit as well, maybe to there. All right, so we'll call that my crop. Close. Now, if I want to copy and paste my correction settings, any of you remember, I'll just come off of this. I do have some things. I've got some selective tone, I've got some smart lighting, some contrast, and now I've got a bit of crop. So I've got all of these things that are on here. And if I right click on the image thumbnail down here, and I can go to copy correction settings, you see here, Control-Shift-C also does the trick nicely. So I will go ahead and do that. And then if I go ahead and select all of these and right click, I can get a few choices here. So if I come up to paste correction settings, it's a further menu. So I can paste all correction settings. I can paste selected corrections. I can do only locals, only globals. I don't happen to have any locals on this, but that's really great because I know in the past when I've done this kind of move, sometimes I'll have very particular local edits for an image and I paste them across and they totally miss the mark on the next image. So great little choice there. But if and I'll just click into the paste selected correction settings so you can get a sense for that. Quite literally, it's as it is, it's got some basics like things that are applied, lens correction. I don't need unsharp mask on there. We've got working color space, awesome, contrast, etc. Crop is chosen, good. Distortion's chosen. So that's all good. So I'm happy with that. I don't need to do any other tweaks. So I will go ahead and say paste. You can see those images update. And this is sort of part 2 of that when I copy and paste a crop scenario, just to highlight that crop might not, obviously this is essentially an identical image straight across other than maybe cloud movement. So there's less need for it here, but lots of times you want to have a basic crop, but you need to shift it a bit depending on the image. And so what I tend to do then as a follow-up is I just go through the images one at a time. Once I turn the crop tool on, I leave it on, and let's say I take that one a bit to this direction, and then I come to this next one, and I don't leave the crop tool because it'll just keep doing what it needs to do as I individually come and crop these. So it just kind of can speed up, because cropping in the end can end up taking a bit of time, as you probably have experienced. So that is item number 3, copy and paste correction settings, and also this little trick of keeping the crop tool on and just kind of burning through your images one at a time, doing all the crop, kind of grouping that crop all together so that you get in the zone of cropping, and you don't need to be switching tools all the time. Right then, so item number 4 is actually just, in a way, a combination of the last two, but just reminding you that you can actually do both of the last 2 items from the photo library. So if I pop back here to the photo library, and I have an image that I've kind of done some tweaks on, but I happen to be back in the photo library, I can still right-click, do copy correction settings, and then I can still grab the selection of other images, and I can go paste correction settings in just the same ways. I had deleted it, but I've recreated my preset just for this next bit. Is don't forget that you can get at your presets here too, within this view. If I go up here, and I just had it in the general space, and one of the great things, when you're in that list, the general space shows up at the bottom, and it's not that helpful. But if you come into this menu at the side, those bottom ones come up first in the place of general purpose presets, and my preset shows up there. So I can go ahead and click that, and it's just going through and redoing those based on the preset that I've created. So that is awesome. So those are all of the speeding me up things that I use regularly. So I'm finished with that bit, but I had 2 other bits that I wanted to share with you at the same time. And these are kind of related to, I especially use them with printing, but yes and no, I use them generally as well. But they can be just really helpful overall to me, because sometimes when I'm looking at an image, it's easy to confuse tonality and colors and saturation. It's easy to feel like there's more in an image than there really is because it's got a lot of saturation or something to that effect. And it doesn't give me an exact answer, but it helps me to look at the image differently. So 2 things that I do in that regard, these are my bonus tips, are 1, if I were looking at the tonality of this image, is to just come in and crank the saturation down, because it gives me a sense for the values. And I can start to think about how the contrast is with those values. So we've got the contrast up a bit. Would it go better, if we upped things a little bit? How do I feel about that? You know what I mean? So I can kind of look at it in a different way by just dropping the saturation. And I choose to drop the saturation. Hopefully I'm correct on this. This is a bit of an assumption on my part. But by dropping the saturation, my hope is that I'm keeping the tonalities as pure as possible. Because if I did some other type of a black and white conversion, it might automatically shift the reds brighter or darker. It might automatically shift the yellows brighter or darker. But by just desaturating, I feel as though I'm getting a better representation of what the actual tones are like, how bright the highlights are. So if I come over that, I see that seems like quite a bright highlight, but I see that it's only at 175. What's this one? This one's approaching, about 200. So that one's actually reasonably bright. If I come up into the brighter parts of the clouds, 225. So not too bad. But it can start to give me a sense of where things are at. And I can start to work with the tones in that way. And then when I'm done, of course, I can just come back here and put that back on. My shifts have made the saturation a bit extra strong, so I probably would, on the back of that, just bring that down a little bit. Maybe bring the vibrance up a little bit, but not too much. So that's trick number 1 is bringing the saturation out of it, just so you get a chance to view the tonalities differently, to give you a sense for how dark and light things are. The other thing that I do, so this will be, I was on that bonus tip would have been 5. Let's call this one 6. I'm going to say with confidence, definitely 6, is to use the crop tool to help you out. So, and here's what I mean. So right now I'm looking at this histogram, and actually it's a pretty decent looking histogram. It's got some pretty good coverage. And so I'm happy with that. But I find, especially with some scenes and with faces, I like to do this with faces too, is to grab the crop tool, make my box really small, And you notice that the histogram updates to show what's in the crop tool. So you can get a sense for how that tonality is on that bit of water. You know, you can get a sense for how the tonality is on that dock. That dock is actually a little darker than I felt like it was going to be. So that leads me to think, you know what? I think I probably want to try to just raise that up a little bit. So I'll come back to that. Maybe I want to see what's the tonality like on those hills. Yeah, pretty good actually. Those hills are looking pretty decent for what they are. So literally just kind of moving around the scene, checking out where the tonalities are. What's this like over here? You know, quite bright. So great little tip. Very, very helpful. And then when you're done, if I just, I'd have to undo quite a few times this time, wouldn't I? So yeah, I'll just reset. And of course, now I've messed up my other crop. You know, that is a cost of this one. It's not without cost, but I think personally it's worthwhile. Because given that little dive in, if I close that, I might say to myself now, I want to put a local adjustment, and I want to drop not a graduated filter, a control line on here. I'm going to pop that there, and that's taking that water up quite substantially. Obviously, my mask is a little bit loose. Let me, what after? I'm after this one. Let me do this. Nice. This is probably even good too. Mask. I just want to try to stretch some of those tones out a little bit. Just to bring that up. Keep it with contrast though, so I'll take my blacks down a little bit. Yeah, ballpark. So now if I do that, feels like that's probably going to stand out a little bit more in the image now. But again, if I'm curious, and yes, I will need to redo my crop. So, you know, don't do this too late in the game where you gotta mess up a perfectly good crop. But yeah, that's lifted that heaps. That's lifted that heaps. I think if I come here, see how when I turn off the control line, you can see it's actually stretched those out quite substantially. So it's going to give it quite a lot better look. So great bonus tip number 2. And that is all for me. Roll the outro. Awesome. So hopefully that's been helpful. I know it's certainly, that first technique of speeding things up certainly helped me a lot. So hopefully it's reminded you. It's one of those things, you know, I think probably most of us know that you can click off the tabs and have just the straight list, but sometimes it jumps out of my brain because it's not how I normally work. So anyway, with that, I will say goodbye for now, and I'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.